Today, we have a fantastic conversation with Josh Ball. He is a barber turned missionary to Lisbon, Portugal. And I want you to pay attention to something he says. He really does get personal about his own prayer life. And he says, if he prays his prayer to God, if I can't do this, then take this desire away or change my wife's heart. Hey, you're going to be blessed today by this conversation. I hope it will not only inspire you, but it will encourage you to take the next step as you live on mission for Jesus right where you are.
Welcome to the Antioch Audio Podcast. Today, we're sharing an intentional conversation to help you follow Christ in a life-changing way. Let's jump in.
Thank you, Kara. Yes, here we are with Josh Ball on the line. I'm thankful to have a conversation with you today. Josh, good to hear from you, my friend.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate you having me, man. It's been great to get back into contact with you and just kind of circle back with a relationship that God's put you in our lives. So it's been great.
Yeah, let's kind of start with that. So, your path and my path kind of crossed. Let's say, was it about 5 years ago that happened? I remember we had a lunch meeting over pizza. You brought me to an excellent joint in the Little Rock area.
Yes, I had heard about this guy named Andy Comer that was working in Conway at Antioch there in Conway, and just had several friends in the ministry that just spoke highly of you and was just telling us about this church plant that you were going to in Georgetown, and we're looking for families, we're praying for families to possibly join in
Yeah.
that, and me and my wife were really going through a season where we were trying to evaluate what's next in our lives, what's next for our family, and so we had reached out to possibly to see if that was something that God was leading us to.
Yeah, and I remember back in those days, just meeting with lots of people and kind of casting vision for Antioch, Georgetown, and seeing who God was going to bring as part of that launch team. And I remember thinking, man, I really hope this family joins us, because I remember you just had not had back then, but even currently do. You just have a heart for the Lord and a heart for people, and you called one day and said, "Hey, Andy, this is not for us." And even in the no, I remember, couldn't be more excited because I just knew that God is certainly not through with you guys, and He has plans for you and Sarah and your family. And so today, you kind of have a little bit more clarity about what God's plans are for the Ball family. Is that right?
Yes, I do. It was heartbreaking for me, especially. I just I was it was something I desired. I so badly wanted to join and going to Georgetown with you guys and just being on the front lines with that with the church plant. And my wife was in for it, but it just as we prayed through it, it just it seemed like it just kept getting doors kept getting closed, and it just wasn't a
Yeah,
possibility at the time. So we just trusted the Lord and said, "If Lord, if you want us there, you'll get us there." So
yeah. It's kind of like what they say. Sometimes God says yes. Sometimes He says no, and sometimes He says, not quite yet. I've got something else in store. So we definitely want to jump in and hear more about what God has been calling you to. But let's kind of start at the beginning. Why don't you take a minute to tell us, how did you come to Christ? Like, when did Josh's and Jesus's relationship first begin?
yeah, absolutely. It it was my mother. She raised me in church, and I just even from my earliest memories were being in a wonderful church family. I was just very blessed in that aspect, and it was Westmoreland Baptist Church there in Huntington, West Virginia. Still remember the pastor's name, Eddie Gandy. I was kind of a strange, odd character in the sense of I enjoyed going to the sermons, listening to the sermons instead of going to Sunday school and things like that. Not always, but sometimes. But I just remember I was about 7 years old, and pastor he made just that. He asked, is there anybody here that would like to to follow Christ. And I remember getting up and just making that profession of faith, and just telling him that that's what I wanted to do. And then through several weeks after that, me and my mother, we had some good talks, and had some talks with the pastor, just making sure I understood that at that early of an age. And they
Yeah.
just affirmed that and said that yeah, he fully understands what he's doing. So, but I also felt that interchange. I felt that the Holy Spirit was just living in me. I wasn't sanctified, but I was definitely a
Yeah.
changed person from that point forward.
Yeah. Very cool. So, um, kind of fast forwarding to today, feeling called to mission work. And as we said in the introduction, going to be moving to Lisbon, Portugal. That must mean that, in college, you kind of went into ministry and served as a pastor or a youth pastor or something like that. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My wife and I recorded a video for our church of the day, and she made the comment. She said, "We're just ordinary people," and
Hmm.
that's the truth. There is nothing extraordinary about us. We're my wife's a nurse. I'm a barber, um, and we just love the Lord, and we want to share. That's our favorite topic to talk about, and so we love people, and it's taken a while to get to the point to where we're at right now about in going to missions, but I could look back through the past 10 years and just see where God's led us into different scenarios, whether it be leading Bible studies or just personally growing in our faith through being mentored or discipled, or us mentoring or discipling other people. How God grew us and brought us to that point.
So, kind of at what point, you're a barber,
Mhm.
your wife's a nurse, so you're active in your church, you're serving. Kind of at what point did you start to sense that God was calling you to mission work in Lisbon, Portugal? I mean, that's a big jump.
Change from being a barber.
Tell us a little. Do
Big
I?
change from being a barber in Saline County.
Yeah. Right.
Uh,
How'd all that come about?
Yeah. So I had really been talking to my wife about just being more involved in ministry. I had a desire to be. I felt called to ministry, and not in the sense that you can't do anything. Or be effective, with your job or something like that. It was. I really did feel called to be in vocational ministry, and so I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know if it was God was calling me to be a lead pastor. Didn't know if he was calling me to just be on staff somewhere at a church, or church planning.
Yeah.
Didn't know what. So my wife, she was very reluctant. She didn't share the same ambition in those areas that I had. Not that she didn't love the Lord or anything, but it just wasn't something that God had really moved in her heart. She also knew that would potentially lead to us leaving this area. And she is an Arkansas girl, born and raised, and she didn't have any desire to leave. So,
Hmm.
Andy, a lot of times our conversations would they wouldn't turn into a fight, but there would just be some tension and just disagreements about the desires we had for our family moving forward. And so it had been a while that we'd been on this course, and just like we talked about, we'd looked and seen if and prayed about if we were supposed to go to Georgetown, and that door was closed, and there was a few other options that we explored, and just it was never settled. And so one day I was at my barber shop, and I had about an hour in between clients. And man, I don't know if you ever get on Google Earth and just kind of do that drop down view, and you do that street view.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that. And I did this often for some reason, and it started out innocently, and but then it would eventually evolve into me imagining what it would be like to plant or lead a church in this culture or context, wherever that city was, wherever I was at, whether it be China, whether it be wherever I could look.
Right.
It would just turn into that. And so this particular day, I just happened to be in Europe, and I'm just on Google Earth, just looking around, and
You're in your barber shop,
yeah,
but you just happen to be in
yeah.
Europe. Yeah.
And so I I kind of just snap out of this daydream. you know,
Mm,
and you ever get those moments where you just snap out of it, you're like, well, that's an hour of my life I'll never get back. That's
yeah.
what I was thinking, and this time it struck differently. I was very frustrated. Um, I sat back and I started thinking about all the conversations that I'd had with my wife, and the strong desire that I had to be involved in ministry, and I just felt so pulled back and just on a leash. And so with all honesty, I just prayed a very frustrated prayer to the Lord, and I just said, Lord, if I can't do this, if I can't do what I feel like is a desire that you've given me, then take this desire away from me. I don't want it if I can't do it. And
Mm,
I don't know what made me pray this next part, other than maybe attribute that to the Lord. But I just said, or change Sarah's heart. And I jokingly say it was just like, you do it, big boy. If you think you can change her heart, you do it. And so I prayed that prayer that day, and I wrote in my journal. I wrote,
mm,
missions question mark. I wrote, change, Sarah's heart. Take this desire away. And I was just several points I'd put in my journal. I prayed that prayer for 2 days. Come back home after the second day of praying those prayers and just talking to the Lord about it. And me and my wife were having an evening on the couch, and she just looked randomly up at me and asked me, what would you think about moving to Europe? So
wow.
I just knew at that point that it
Wow.
was from, from the Lord. And
Yeah.
it was the first time that I was able to look at her and have that conversation, and there not be some type of tension or frustration in our conversation about it. And so
Yeah.
I just said, let's just have a conversation with our missions pastor, and just simply a conversation and see where it goes from there.
I mean, you've been open and vulnerable and kind of sharing that kind of personal uh, struggle and prayer with the Lord. What was some of her objections? What were the kind of hangups for Sarah in regards to being a missionary?
Yeah. So hers were, number one, her family. Her family is very close, very tight knit. And that's just something
Mm,
I didn't come from in my background. Not to say that I don't love my family or that my family didn't love me, um, but
yeah.
we didn't get together every weekend like her family did,
Yeah.
and do the types of things that a very close family does. Um, and so she just knew how much that was going to rock the boat, upset all these feelings that are going to come over her family, and not just her family but her, that didn't necessarily affect me the same way. And then also,
Yeah.
it was interesting that I remember her saying that she thought in her mind that a missionary was she perceived a missionary as more of a perfect Christian, which
Mm,
I'll attest that that is not the case.
yeah. Right. Yeah. So true. I think about even in the Bible. Anytime God would call someone to a place, they always had to leave something or someone behind.
Yeah,
It's kind of that daily pick up your cross daily and follow me. And so it sounds like that was something that your wife was having to work through.
yes.
Was there anything like that for you? Or was this just something that you were just 100% behind? Like what obstacles or challenges were there for Josh?
That's a good question because a lot of times I can say that I was just ready to go, full bore at the very beginning. But as we started to move more into this, the question about my kids, of how this would affect my kiddos, um, it started to come up
Mm,
quite a bit in my mind. Am I making the right choice? Is this just something I'm manufacturing? But each time I start to have those thoughts, the Lord would just in some way remind me of how he's worked in my life, how he's guided our steps to this point, and then also just remind us that those are his kids too, and those are his kids first, and that he's going to
that's
take care of
good.
those kids far better than I can ever be able to.
Yeah. So let's kind of go back to Europe for a second. From Central Arkansas, which is currently where y'all are still residing, right? What's the timeline look like for you guys? When would you be expecting and hoping to get to Portugal?
We were praying for a an 18-month timeline from whenever we started um, trying to gain partnership with churches and individuals. Um, and then 2020 hit, COVID hit.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
it really puts a kink in your plans whenever you're trying to go see individuals or churches, things like that of that nature. So there was about a 6 to 8 month timeline where I'm not even able to schedule any appointments to even see any pastors, individuals, things like that. So um, I say all that to say God has been faithful every step of the way, and from all accounts, it looks like we will be completely on that timeline that we prayed for in 18 months, and possibly even earlier.
Awesome.
And so we're looking
Oh,
at
wow.
July of 2021 when we hopefully we're praying to be fully funded by then with our monthly partnership, and then also we've got another fund which is like a one-time outfit and passage that just basically gets us there to Europe. So the
Yeah.
Lord, He has been so faithful and just providing throughout all this, even through a pandemic. So it's just been great to watch.
Have you guys been to Portugal yet, or when you arrive, will it be the first time?
No, we got to go just before the pandemic hit. We actually went in January of 2020, this past year. We went over there for a week and went to the capital city there in Lisbon. And the sending organization we're going through is called ABWE. It's Association of Baptists for World Evangelism. It's kind of a mouthful, so they kind of tightened it up to ABWE. And
Yeah.
so, but they're a really a sister organization to the IMB in a lot of ways. But they're really good, reputable organization, and we felt called to go through them. We'd searched and just reached out to a few other organizations, but really just felt at home through ABWE. And I say all that to say they also have a international school there, and so we got to stay at that international school there in Lisbon. And there's a team there that just took us north, south, east, and west of that city, where we got to just visit and meet some national pastors, some other local missionaries there that. Even met a missionary that was from Searcy, Arkansas, that was just not too far away from us that we didn't even know that
Oh,
on the
wow.
team. It was some pretty cool stuff that transpired.
Yeah, very cool. What as you're kind of walking around Lisbon for that week, did you sense anything, kind of where while you were there from the Lord of kind of what He's doing or kind of what some of the needs are there?
Yes. So I'll say I'll preface it with this: to be Portuguese is to be Catholic, um, and I'm not going to say that I've never met a spirit-filled Catholic, um, but whenever I do, the majority of Catholics that I do speak with, there is a lot of religion and just hope in religion instead of hope
Yeah.
in Jesus. Um, and so, also, I'll say that we went. They took us around, as I said, north, south, east, and west of that city, and it's massive. It's one of the bigger cities I've ever been in, and I'm driving through it, and they're just taking us all through these different neighborhoods, and I'm praying, I'm asking the Lord, Lord, what do you want me to see while I'm here? And I feel like I may be over spiritualizing it. I don't know what I'm doing, and I just knew I was having a good time, and that it was just such a beautiful place, and so I don't feel like I'm hearing anything from the Lord. I just feel like I'm there, and that's okay. And so as we were returning home to the international school that evening, that first day there, that they just took us everywhere. I just prayed one last time. I said, Lord, what are you trying? What do you want me to see while I'm here? And it's as if He just pulled back the curtains, and I'd realized that I hadn't seen a church as we knew it here in the United States anywhere throughout that 12-hour period that I was just all over Lisbon. I've
Mm,
seen one
wow.
operational Catholic church The rest were boarded up, or they were a tattoo parlor, a library, a bar, just something, just repurposed for something else other than getting to know the Lord. So,
Yeah.
and I remember laying in bed that night, and I counted the churches as I left my driveway at my house to till I drove to the main road in our town. And it's about 9 miles away, and I remember counting 9 churches that I pass just in that stretch.
Hmm.
Um, and so I say all that to say there is a great need for people to be able to have a chance to hear the gospel. Because an interesting
Yeah.
fact is that the Protestant Reformation, never made it past Spain, and so it's been heavily influenced by the Catholic Church.
So kind of fast forwarding now 20 years down the road, what does success look like for you?
Success in 20 years in Lisbon, um, I would say. It would be easy to say, I would love to go over there and just be able to share my faith with whoever would listen and things like that. But I think success would be seeing a church planting movement and a missions movement that was birthed out of this. Um, and that is a really bold prayer.
Hmm.
After visiting the city and visiting the country, that I just can't describe how bold of a vision that would be. But that's one thing. As I was looking over the city one night, as I was on the veranda there at the international school, it was just as if the Lord just said it, and he was just telling me, there's nothing I can do on my best day, on my best effort, on my best try. There's nothing I can do to change that spiritual situation in that city, but it would literally take the hand of God to change it. And
Yeah.
only that's going to come about through prayer and through bold prayer. And so that's one of the very first things that God put on my heart was Luke 18, the story of the persistent widow. Just walking me through that, and just asking me to pray and
Hmm.
pray boldly, for God to just change the spiritual climate, the spiritual setting all throughout Lisbon and all throughout Portugal. And so, what that looks like right now is church planting movements and missional movements there in that country. So that is what we're praying for.
What kind of encouragement would you give to the person who's listening to this and maybe they're a barber or a nurse or a teacher or a car mechanic and just feeling a strong sense that God is either leading them to something more in their spiritual walk, or maybe God is leading them towards living more on mission. Maybe that's more locally. Maybe it's actually moving somewhere
Yeah.
and being part of a church plant, or living as a missionary in another part of the world. But they're really struggling with that, what that looks like, and they're not sure what step to take. Um, what kind of encouragement would you give them?
I would say that in my experience, God doesn't use the extraordinary. He just uses those that are just willing, and willing to
Mm,
be prayerful and to be intentional about sharing their faith. Um, it takes a point in our walk with Christ to sit back and say, I've got to be intentional in doing these things. And if we're not sharing our faith and we're not intentionally engaging people, then people will never hear that. And so, um, God wants the Holy Spirit wants to use regular people like me as a barber, or my wife that's a nurse
yeah.
in their occupation every day. And it can start with just simply by praying with somebody. A very seasoned pastor, a friend of mine, that just very wise. He, as I was having questions like that, he told me start out by just asking to pray for somebody. He said you'll be you will be hard pressed to find somebody that will say, "No, I don't want you to pray for me." And I don't think anybody that I've ever asked, "Hey,
Hmm,
can I pray for you today?" That has ever turned down a prayer. So, um, and then also,
yeah.
um, I mean this in a literal sense. If you can sweep a broom, you are needed in missions. Um, it is
Hmm,
the harvest is plentiful. It's an understatement.
yeah.
And so that is one thing I will say also is that we need missionaries. We need people that just are willing to say, Lord, I don't know how you want to use me, but please use me. And then just take that next step. You may not, the door may close. If God, doesn't want you in Portugal, if you take that step, He's not going to let if you're not supposed to be in Portugal, He's not going to let you be in Portugal. So we can trust
Yeah.
God whenever we take that step that He's going to guide and direct our steps.
So good. That's so good. You brought up prayer. How can our people, how can our church specifically be praying for Josh and Sarah?
It sounds cliche, but that's the very first thing that most people will say, what can we be doing right now? And I will say, it's pray bold prayers for us, because it's going to be such hard soil over there, that we need bold prayer more than anything. And so
Mm,
they can be doing that, and then also we ask that they be praying for our team that's already on the ground, and then also be prayerfully considering um, any opportunities that arise, that they may be able to come over and partner, whether it be joining the team, being a missionary over there with us. Um, we have, like I said, the international school that's there. We have several openings for teachers to come teach our kiddos. We need people to come teach my kids, so come on over. But we have some just a lot of international students from India, China, um, Norway, and just, I mean, several different countries, that they might necessarily not follow Christ, but they come there and they are taught about Jesus by the teachers that they're teaching. So um, prayerfully consider that. And then also, lastly, we can't go until we are fully funded with our monthly support. And so that's been one of the hardest things I think God's been working through me, is just humbling me, and just working with that. And so
yeah.
we humbly ask that you consider partnering with us financially through monthly support. So
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, Josh. I know it's an inspiration to me. Kind of having been there in that initial conversation when I met you over pizza,
yeah,
and just sensing God's stirring in your heart, and then just kind of seeing how God has answered those prayers and moving and working through your life. If we could just kind of wrap up and ask you some kind of final four questions, just to let people get to know you a little bit better. What might be a favorite verse for you?
yeah. I've always fallen back on Romans 8:28. And when we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. It's
Mm,
something that's always comforted me whenever, um, just knowing that I've been called according to His purpose, not mine, not
yeah,
the world's, for His purpose.
yeah. What about a Bible character that you'd say that you most identify with?
I would love to say Paul, and say just bold and just very ambitious. But I could say it could
Yeah.
also be Peter, where a lot of times I may not. I can stick my my foot in my also, I have those moments. I'll just be candid and say, I don't always keep my eye on Jesus, but thankfully He's so gracious, and He reaches out His hand to where I can focus back directly on Him.
So good, so good. What about a non-biblical book that God has used to change your life?
Non-biblical book. It would be The Intercessor by Norman Grubb. It's a story about this gentleman named Reese Howells, and he was basically God used him to birth the Great Welsh Revival, and it just goes into a lot of details of how God worked in through
Hmm.
him, and just some of the things that happened during that revival. And um, as you read it, if you can't sit there and go, I don't know what that would look like for God to work in my life that way, but you also go, I want God to work that way in my life if He can. And I think the what we can land on is that God can do anything He chooses to, and if we pray for it and keep seeking it, it's going to glorify Him. He's going to do some big things in your life.
And finally, how can people connect or contact you if they kind of want to join a prayer list or know how they can just be involved in what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. They can either email me at josh.ball@abwe.cc, or we also have a Facebook page. It's called Passion Portugal Ball Family Missions. Love to connect with anybody
Awesome.
that would like to have more conversation.
Awesome. So I want to encourage people to do that. Go to Facebook right now and look up Passion Portugal. We'll also kind of put a link in our show notes today, so you can just kind of directly connect. Josh, thank you so much for having a conversation with us today. Our prayer is that this would encourage and inspire others in their own walks with the Lord as they're living on mission for Him. And man, we look forward to having you back maybe in a couple years after you're in Portugal, and
Absolutely.
just kind of getting an update and seeing what God is doing.
Absolutely.
All right,
Been
take
great.
care, man. Thanks for your time today. All
Thanks,
right,
Andy.
see you.